Hi, everyone. I'm Alison Snyder. I'm one of the managing editors at Axios. Great to see everyone. Thank you for being here. Our next guest joining me on stage is Helen Toner. She's the Director of Strategy and Foundational Research Grants at Georgetown University's Center for Security and Emerging Technology. Come on out. All right. So, I was taking a note backstage because you mentioned that you've been studying AI safety since before ChatGPT, and I was thinking it's quite a different world. The vibe has really changed after Paris, within the administration, sort of what they're talking about. And so my first question is, like, as someone who believes this is still a huge issue and a problem, what do you do now?
Yeah, it's a great question. A question on many people's minds right now, I think. As you say, the vibes have majorly shifted. I think I've been thinking about, what happened the past few years. What did we see? What were the vibes? Why did they shift? And I think one important thing that happened was there was this community of people who had been thinking about AI futures, AI safety, AI risks for a long time, for years. And then this ChatGPT moment came, and those people had been worrying about various ways that things might go badly. And suddenly, I think ChatGPT surprised a lot of people, especially people outside the AI community. And that surprise was also linked with concern. So people were surprised. They were like, oh no, is this good? Is this bad? Should I be worried? And I think there was a bit of a sense for people who had been working in this space for so long of like, oh, maybe this is actually all more obvious than we thought it was. We'd been kind of toiling in obscurity, but people actually seemed to get it. They seemed kind of freaked out. Like, maybe we can just go for it. Maybe we don't actually have to lay a bunch of groundwork of what are the problems, how would we tell how big they are, how do we tackle them? Maybe like we're concerned, we've been thinking about it for a while. Now everyone's suddenly concerned, let's go. And it turned out that actually, people's concern, the general public's concern, policymakers' concern in the post-ChatGPT moment maybe was a little shallower or a little bit more of a sort of snap reaction, which meant that, maybe at first they were concerned and there was a window, it seemed like there was a window to do something about it. But then actually, once they had a chance to hear other narratives, hear from, in some cases industry lobbyists, but also hear from other perspectives in the AI space, that concern they had, that fear, was not actually as deeply grounded or as lasting as maybe some AI safety advocates had hoped. And the problems are maybe not as obvious as some of the AI safety advocates had suddenly thought, wait, maybe it's much more obvious than we had thought. So I think we're now back to actually none of this is obvious. Actually, it's not at all clear how AI is developing, even what it can do today, let alone what it'll be able to do 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now. And so I think, to me, what we need to go back to is building that groundwork of what are the problems we're concerned about, what are we talking about, what can we do about them, what can we put in place now that will help us understand the situation better and be able to respond better as it changes and evolves.
I want to come back to some of those problems, but I want to ask a little bit more about this because, there are some very powerful people who are making some big decisions at the moment. A lot of them come from the tech world. Do you trust Elon Musk and David Sachs to help create steps to build safe AI?
I don't think that strong liberal democracies and good outcomes for society are based on trusting any one individual. I think trusting in individuals is not the way to go here. That's what leads you to a kind of benevolent dictatorship situation, which everyone knows is not a great plan. So I think what we need is not trust in any one specific person, but more trying to put more systematic things in place that will help guide things in a good direction.
So we just heard in the last segment about AGI and all the different timelines for AGI, and there's so much focus on it. What about before then, and what if it's not achieved? What still needs to be done? How can we prepare? What's needed?
Yeah. I think something I've noticed the last kind of few months or so is I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty about what is happening with AI, a lot of disagreement among experts. So some experts think it's one way, some experts think it's a totally different way. And I think sometimes it gets distilled down into this split screen view of these two possible futures, where on the one hand, maybe the future is what Anthony was just talking about a moment ago. Maybe the future is country of geniuses in a data center. Within the next 1 to 3 years, everything goes incredibly fast. You build AGI, then you build superintelligence. Everything is radically transformed, within the next 24 months, 36 months. That's a wild possibility. The takeaway I think for a lot of people presented with that is well, there's nothing I can do about that. That's out of wow, I feel overwhelmed. And then the other side of the split screen is some experts think that's all hype. It's all crazy, nothing's going to happen. we're not going to see dramatic progress. Everything is going to be business as usual, nothing to see here. And the takeaway from that, again, is, well, okay, sure, nothing for me to do. We can just sort of relax and it's all fine. And I think, in reality, if you think about it, the likely outcome is not going to be either of those two extremes. It's going to be most likely, maybe it'll be one or the other, most likely it'll be something in the middle. And by something in the middle, I don't mean something sort of boring and business as usual. I mean like very, very radical change, but over the period of 5, 10, 15 years. And in that case, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do in terms of creating requirements for what kind of information companies have to disclose. There's a lot we can do in terms of building up technical capacity inside governments to understand these problems. There's a lot we can do in terms of investing in the science of understanding how AI systems work. So not just advancing what they can do, but interpretability as a field of what is going on inside any one AI system. Or there's so much better we could do with measurement science for AI, understanding how good are different AI systems. What can the system do? What can't it do? When will it succeed? When will it fail? There's so much we could do in terms of mitigation, defense, adapting to the possibility that we'll have AI systems that, for example, make it easy for anyone to build a bioweapon or easy for anyone to, hack critical infrastructure. If you know that's coming, you can invest in defending in advance. You can try really hard to up the defenses of your water plants and your electrical grid. So I think something that I've been thinking about a lot recently is how do we kind of convey that maybe we get one of these extremes of really, really rapid progress or really not much progress. Most likely, we get radical transformation of society on a pretty short time scale, but a 5 to 10 to 15 year time scale rather than 1 to 3. And if that's what we can do, if that's what's happening, then there's a lot we can do. And so how do you kind of bring that energy rather than the sort of hopeless overwhelm that I think a lot of people seem to be feeling right now?
Right. A big part of this is this race dynamic in the capitalist context and, of course, in the US-China context. I mean, that's not going away, right? What can you do within those constraints? What are sort of I guess even that coupled with these compressed timelines for what's might happen?
I think one huge thing we can try to do, so there's different types of competitive dynamics. There's within one country, within the US, you have different companies competing with each other to bring their products to market fastest, to get investment dollars. And then, of course, there's US-China competition, international competition more broadly. And, I think in terms of the international competition, I don't think I need to say that we're in an incredibly bad moment right now for any kind of, country-to-country cooperation, any kind of nice international arrangement. That's not going to happen anytime soon. But I think what we can do is try and build a clearer picture of the situation, a clearer picture of the risks, and more consensus around what would be concerning if we see it. So there's like glimmers of this that's happening. There's a set of or a type of work that's been happening around responsible scaling policies, or also gets called like if-then governance, where the idea is we don't know exactly where AI is going, but we can set out approaches where if we develop AI that can do this, or if it looks like we're on a path to develop AI that can do X, hack the electricity grid, or escape the environment it's developed in and roam free on the internet and wreak havoc. If you see this, then here's the governance that you might need. We're seeing individual companies opt into or describe these kind of plans for themselves. And we've actually already seen that start to spread. It started with 3 US companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. We've now seen those commitments from a broader range of companies, including European companies, and even a set of Chinese companies kind of develop their own internal if-then policies as well, or committed to develop them. So I think there's a lot. I think that is far from a complete solution. This is all right now. It's voluntary, it's self-regulatory. But I think that kind of clarity of what are the problems we're concerned about, what will we observe if we're on track to hit those problems, and what can we do about it? I think that puts you in a better position to potentially sort of coordinate and collaborate in the future, even if we can't do that right now.
But where does that fall short, the if-then governance? That assumes you can then do something.
Yeah, I think it falls short if it's all that you have. I think what makes me optimistic about it is that if we can have serious effort to articulate clearly and in detail what kind of things would we expect to observe if the systems are getting dangerous in different kinds of ways that they may or may not get dangerous, then even that the mere articulation of that is already helpful, because a lot of these things, they're actually not in anyone's interest. So for example, if the US was very confident, we're pretty close to building AI systems that could escape their developers' control entirely and do very bad things, And the Chinese government also thought, oh, we're very close to building these kind of systems. It's actually not in anyone's interest. And so that, if you have that firm foundation of we actually agree that's where we are, I think that does put you on a different footing to coordinate about what could you do about it. But we're very far from that right now. There's so many different perspectives of, what kind of risks will we see and when.
You mentioned earlier having no hope for any sort of international cooperation, or maybe not international, but between, I'm guessing, U.S. and China. But you also talked about having a shared vision of what those risks are. Like, what is that really going to happen? How could that, what are some of those things where it seems like a very small operating space? Like, what could that look like realistically today?
Yeah, I think if we have several years, if it's not the radically dramatic, 1 to 3 year time frame, in that time frame, it's really hard to do anything. If we have a little bit longer, I do think there's been a lot of progress in the science of understanding how AI systems work. We're not there. We still don't really understand what exactly is going on inside the gigantic sets of numbers that make up these AI systems. But we do actually have better and better research of, okay, how do we understand how the system is making its decisions? Also things like, how likely are these systems to try and deceive their operators, for example, or to scheme against, you give them some objective and they actually pretend that they're doing what you want, but they're doing something else instead. Or understanding, having better ways of measuring how sophisticated they are as hackers or as tools for cyber attacks. And so that is all stuff that right now, it's pretty fuzzy, it's pretty early days, but I do think there's a lot of room to get much more clarity on that could create the basis of a type of consensus that, again, would just be the first layer of being able to do something about it. It's not like once you have that consensus, you're done. But right now, we don't even have that. And so we really can't even make a start.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but there's so much focus on the race to AGI. What about beyond that? What happens then?
No one knows.
But from a safety perspective, how do you even begin to, if you're not even here, but this is a reality potentially, how do you?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of uncertainty about is AGI even the right concept to think about? I think sometimes we get very fixated on AI that functions like a human, which is maybe a different thing that we may or may not get, versus AI that can compete with a human in many different domains. So anyway, I think there's a lot of, it's hard to pin down the terminology. I guess the place that I start from is we have is to listen to what the companies are saying that they're trying to build. And it's not just marketing hype. If you go talk to the top researchers and the top engineers inside these companies, they'll tell you the same thing. So if they say, we are trying to build AI that can outcompete humans at any cognitive task, and we are trying to build AI that is potentially far, far better than humans at any cognitive task, I take them seriously that that's something they think is possible and that it's something they think they're making progress towards. And I think we should have some error bars around what will that look like? Will it go the way they think it will? We certainly shouldn't assume that they're correct, but I think we should take it seriously as a possibility. And if that's where they say, if that's the road that they say they're on, we should be trying to think ahead about okay, what are the milestones along that road? Where might it lead us?
Last question. What's your optimistic take on what AI may look like in, I don't know, you pick the time, 2, 3, 5 years?
Yeah, I think my optimistic take would be that right now these systems, they're still very limited. They still have a lot of issues with reliability, with hallucinations or confabulations, you're just making things up, with maintaining coherence across long time frames. So if they have there's a great result recently, actually, Anthropic put out. Have people seen this Claude Plays Pokemon? You know what I'm talking about? It's so fun. Their latest model, Claude 3.7, they put out a Twitch stream, so a live stream of the model playing Pokemon. It's got a pretty basic setup so that it can play the game. And it's a great demonstration of the strengths and weaknesses of the systems that we have today. Because it's really impressive. This Claude 3.7 actually gets a decent way through the game, which previous models really haven't been able to do. But it's still very limited in terms of if it is in any kind of maze, it gets lost because it can't really keep track of where it's been and how it should reason about what's happening next. It struggles to sort of keep in mind, here's my big picture goal, and here's my medium picture goal, and here's what I need to do right now to kind of surface that. And maybe I should change my medium goal if it turns out that I was mistaken about how it will help me along. There's all this stuff that we kind of do pretty intuitively as humans. I don't think any of this is a fundamental barrier to building smarter AI systems. I think the researchers will get there. They'll make the systems that can do this stuff. But I think if it turns out to take them, 2, 5, 10 years to do that, as opposed to 3 months, then I do think I have a lot of faith in human society's ability to adapt and to try things and to be resilient if we have a few chances to see what's happening, to bounce back, to adjust along the way. So I think my optimistic scenario is that those issues are not as trivial to resolve as some of the most sort of people who are most optimistic about progress think that they will be, and therefore we get a few more bites at the apple in terms of understanding what's going on here, assessing the risks, and then figuring out how to mitigate them.
And also, it sounds like part of it is slowing down. Is that?
I mean, I think I don't feel very optimistic about us deciding to slow down. So I always don't really like talking about slowing down, because I think if you try to actively slow down, it's very hard to do that. But I think worlds where it turns out to just be harder than we thought it might be, and we end up having a little bit more time, I think that gives us a better shot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to leave that here. And thank you, everybody, for joining us at Axios House. There's actually going to be a couple more events this afternoon here, conversations with comedian Chelsea Handler and Bobby, Chief Brand Executive Kim Chappell, and more. So thank you all. Hope to see you again.